Connect Run Club podcast, episode number 115. Nick Symmonds. Hey, welcome back, runners, to the Connect Run Club podcast. I see what the title of the podcast is, and I had a hard time saying it. What the title is of the podcast, but
yeah.
It is.
Why is Nick Symmonds so controversial?
There you go.
That is.
There you go.
It's a clickbait title because we want you to click on it, but it's also true because when I've heard the name Nick Symmonds recently, or not recently, but just
in general,
usually he's surrounded by some type of controversy that usually folks are trying to make into something. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is, but he's definitely very opinionated, which is a good thing.
He is, and I like how he embraces it. He doesn't run from it, and that's what surprised me when we talked with him. And I don't want to give away everything, but when we talked to him about being controversial and being that lightning rod, he embraced it as his brand, which I thought was good. The fact that he doesn't resent it, the fact that he doesn't get upset about it, he just embraces it as his brand. And and I think he uses his ability wisely as well. He doesn't nitpick, and he's not a drama queen. He doesn't fight over stuff that he has no value in. He fights over stuff that he is passionate about, not just anything.
Yeah, it's true. Now, do you want to give folks a little overview if they're not super in the track world?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Not everyone follows track and field like I do. I will TiVo it at 2:00 in the morning and watch it at 5:00 in the morning. But so yes,
was it the other day you were watching the Berlin Marathon and someone in the office was like, "Why would you watch the Berlin Marathon or something?"
Yes,
you're talking about like watching it like you're watching like the Knicks game or something.
That's exactly right.
What are you doing?
Yes,
that was good.
But Nick Symmonds, in fact, we get into it in the podcast, but he is one of my favorite athletes. And he is one of my favorite athletes because of how he runs. And I can value his expression and I can value his opinions. But in reality, he is a two-time Olympian. He is a 6-time 800-meter world champion. I mean, a United States champion. He's fun to watch. He is one of those guys who gives it everything he has. He has done just about every distance you can imagine. And in reality, he is a guy who has, in my opinion, he has maximized his talent. When you look at certain runners, you know that there's probably a lot in him. Like if you compared, and I hate to do this is mean, but I don't mean to, but Ryan Hall. Yep. If you look at Ryan Hall, you're like, did he leave something out there? I don't know whether he did or not. But when you look at Nick Symmonds,
Ryan, if you're listening, we would love to have you on the podcast. We actually really like you.
Yes. Yeah. But if you look at Nick Symmonds is a guy who got overlooked his whole life. Yeah. And look at where he put himself on the world stage as an 800-meter runner. He didn't seem like a natural, long distance athlete or runner. And so as he grew up, he decided he wanted to get into it. And I loved his rationale for getting in the cross country in the first place, which was a girl. So there you go.
That's how we start. But this is fun. And when you see controversial, everything that he is pushing for is what's good for track and field. Yeah. Which is fun to kind of see him fighting against the big names. I mean, he gets into the USATF. Yeah, he gets into their deal with Nike, all different types of stuff, and basically how these athletes are doing these amazing things, but the money isn't trickling down to them. It's getting stopped, and they're not even allowed to do certain things. So that's a lot of the stuff that we get into, and he's just super fast.
He is.
And he's a blast to talk to.
It is. And he doesn't fight for himself because he's one of the athletes who is okay. Yeah. He's fighting for athletes who are not at the top and are not making money from sponsorships. That's what I really appreciate in him, because this could be out of a selfish motive, but it's not, because he is one of those that is okay, but he's fighting for athletes who are struggling to make it year in and year out.
And another big thing we get into is if you guys have ever been running and you needed an energy boost, but you were tired of putting all kinds of crazy sugar into your belly, he's got a company called Run Gum, which is caffeinated gum, which sounds crazy, but he gets into and how to get what you need on the run without all the crazy stuff. So.
Yeah, because he is a believer in not putting a whole bunch of junk in your stomach because you can't tolerate it. So he's a biochemist. And so he knows what he's doing. Yeah. And it was really interesting to hear about Run Gum. Me and you were both kind of excited to hear about that product. So
I love caffeine.
to hear about that.
Coffee right here. Run gum would make this a lot easier than what I'm doing right now. So
absolutely.
Well, good stuff, guys. Well, before we get into the interview, as always, if you guys like what we're doing, the number one way that you can support us is leaving a review on iTunes. If you go to connectrunclub.com/review. And you can let us know whatever you think. It could be a 1-star, it could be a 5-star.
Yeah.
And then share it and join us over on Facebook. We got a great community over there. connectrunclub.com/Facebook. Private Facebook group where we do a weekly live Q&A with Trey, as well as just tons of conversations going on with folks that are running all over the world.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Well, let's jump into our interview with Nick Symmonds.
Well, thanks again, Nick, for talking with us. Really excited to talk with you today. It was funny. I was thinking the other day, and probably, and this is probably a name from the past. I don't even know what he's doing now, but I've followed your career. And Anthony Famigoletti, he was one of my favorite runners back in the day, Run Fam. And I remember him at the 2008, I think, trials where he decided just like to run like a madman from the start, and he never looked back. So, but follow both of your careers and enjoy watching you run.
Thank you.
Well, hey, would love to kind of get into your background a little bit. How did you get started running in the first place, Nick?
Well, in 8th grade, a girl I had a crush on went out for the cross country team, and she asked me to come run for fun just to spend time with her. And running for fun sounded like a horrible idea, but spending time after school on a co-ed team sounded like a worthwhile endeavor. So I went out for cross country when I was 13, 8th grade.
Did that quickly lead to track after you hit cross country?
No, actually, I ended up running cross again in the fall of my freshman year of high school. But I played soccer in the spring, and it wasn't until the spring of my sophomore year that I actually went out for track and field for the first time.
Gotcha. Now, you grew up in Idaho, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Boise, Idaho.
Boise, Idaho. How did, I would imagine growing up in Idaho has probably impacted your life as far as things you love to do now?
Yeah, it's a great place to grow up. It's isolated, but it's got a good size. So there's a lot of culture. It's just, if you like the outdoors, it's a real playground. There's hunting and fishing and hiking and boating. And I mean, you name it. It's got 4 very distinct seasons. There's a ski hill less than 30 minutes away. There's a reservoir less than 30 minutes away. It is truly a playground.
That's neat. Now, was running something that you loved from the get-go? I've read recently that you said, hey, I love to run, but the training part, I'm really not going to miss quite as much. Is something that was running something you grabbed early on?
I think even early on, I didn't even like running. I never understood. I was a soccer player and an ice hockey player, and I loved those sports, but just running around for the sake of running seemed absurd. But I did like that, everyone got equal playing time, and my hard work paid me dividends. And so that's what kept me coming back was just, the feeling of a PR, the feeling of doing something I'd never done before, which I think a lot of people can relate to. But no, even to this day, I don't love training. I think training represents sacrifice and doing whatever is written on the sheet of paper for you, and it's tough. It's not enjoyable. It's not supposed to be enjoyable, I don't think, but I've grown to love running. Going out for an easy hour run is about the most enjoyable thing I think a human being can do. It gives you so much back. Food tastes better. You sleep deeper.
Yeah.
You get to see so much of our world when you're out for a run. So I think that I'll run for the rest of my life. As for training, those gut-wrenching all-out quarters, I don't know that I need to do that necessarily forever.
When you run now, do you have a preference of where you run? Are you a trail guy? Do you like to run on the road? Do you spend any time at the track anymore?
Well, I'm lucky. I live in Seattle, and I have 100 miles of dirt trails out my back door.
Wow.
But I can also run, I'm 2 miles from downtown Seattle. I could go do a real great urban run as well. I've got UW's track and a couple other high school tracks within a mile from me. So I really have the best of all 3 surfaces, and I mix and match quite a bit. I'm still running professionally, and so each day I'm out with my team, the Brooks Beasts, and we're pounding pavement or we're clicking off laps out at the track. It's just in Seattle, we are very, very fortunate to have a great running culture here.
Hey, one of the things when I look back on your career and hear about how you got started when you were 13, but also looking at, hey, you're at a Division III school, and then, you eventually you're at the Oregon Track Club Elite, and then a two-time Olympian. Can you talk about, it seems like to me you didn't limit yourself and limit your goals as you were going through your career. And I think a lot of us runners probably face some limitations that we think we have sometimes. Can you talk about kind of how your career evolved?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an unusual way to get to the Olympics. I came from a little school in Boise, Idaho, and I went to a D3 school with very little support or funding for athletes. There's not a lot of D3 runners going on to the Olympic Games, but for me, that was the right path. And I'd always loved being a big fish in a small pond, and that probably comes from my Idaho upbringing. Idaho is not the running capital of the United States. The times that it takes to win an Idaho state title are considerably slower than they would take to win California or Texas, for example. But I liked being a big fish in a small pond because people would throw resources at you. And so I went to a D3 school where I was, instantly from day one of the better runners, and the coaches and the trainers and the limited resources that we did have went straight to me. And I think that's important. I knew that I would need the extra attention and the extra resources to get where I wanted to go. And so, again, I was fortunate in that sense. I had a good coach in Coach Sam, who to this day is still a mentor and a business partner. And it just, for me, it was the right path. And I always tell kids in high school who say, oh, I have to go D1. It's the only way to get where I want to go. It's just not true. In some ways, going to a D1 program might actually be the obstacle that stops you from going where you want to go. Wow. There is a college program for every single kid out there, whether it's D1, D2, D3, NAIA, any single kid that wants to run in college, I promise you there's a college that you can run on.
As you kind of went through your career, what kind of did the 800 meters, was it just an event that kind of fit your style, or was it kind of the event that worked best for you eventually?
No, I actually started as a 2-miler. Coming from cross country, I told my coach, hey, I'm a distance runner and I don't want to run anything shorter than the 2-mile. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did for most of that first season, was just 2 miles. And then, he talked me into running a mile, and then he talked me into running an 8. And I would say that the 800 chose me. I didn't want to be a half miler, but It became pretty clear early on that was what was going to be my best event.
When you look at strategy for the 800, kind of the signature that we have seen for many, many years was kind of the come from behind strategy. Was that something that was coached? Was that something you just kind of adopted? Was that something that you believed in as a strategy?
I still don't think it's necessarily the best strategy. I just think that the best strategy for most humans is to run a plus 2 second differential. If you're David Rudisha, that means you go out in 49 and you come back in 51 and you're a front runner. Yeah. But I can't go out in 49. I can go out in 50 and I can come back in 52.
Right.
But as we saw at the 2012 Olympic finals, going out in 50 put me in last place. Yeah. That wasn't a conscious choice to be in last place. I just told myself, if I run 50.5 and 52.5, that's a 143.0, and that's about as fast as I think I can run. So that's what I was aiming to do, and that's exactly what I did. Sometimes my first lap of 50.5 puts me in first place or second place, like it did at the 2013 World Championships. Mm-hmm. So it's never really a conscious decision to go to the back. It's just me running the race that I know will fit best to my physiology.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Hey, would love to talk about this past summer, and know the ankle gave you a fit and kept you from getting to the trials. How's the ankle now? Is everything good with the ankle now?
Yeah, I broke it sprinting about 2 weeks before the Olympic trials, which is very frustrating, but it is 100% healed, and I'm putting about 40 to 50 miles a week on it right now, and it seems to be holding up just fine.
How do you, the Olympics is not something that comes around too often, so it's one of those things that I know, especially being 32 years old, that, hey, it's tough to look at not being able to go back again this year. But throughout your career, you've had some amazing successes, but like everyone else, you go through the disappointment. How do you, as an athlete, take those disappointments, and how do you, because I watched your interview after you realized you weren't going to go to the trials, and I just thought, wow, just, amazing to me that you could take it as well as you did. But would love to kind of hear your feedback of how you deal with disappointment as an athlete.
Yeah, I think the first thing that, the natural response is just to feel depressed and angry and frustrated. And I've certainly felt those emotions every time I've had a setback. But you also have to put in perspective and remember that this is just running this, and it's important, but we're not curing disease or feeding the poor, or, saving the world. We're running around in circles. And so I tried to always remember that this is a beautiful sport and it's an important part of my life, but it's just running. And I think that sometimes pros lose perspective. And so when I got injured, I said to myself, yes, of course I'd love to make my third Olympic team, but I'm not going to. And it's just not in the cards for me. And how I tried to just focus on being grateful that my ankle held up through 2 Olympic Games. If this injury had happened in 2008, I never would have been an Olympian. Yeah. So it's really making a conscious effort to look at the good in the situation and not the bad. And also, I've always been an athlete that wanted to be to have multiple interests, to cultivate multiple interests, so that if one wasn't going great, if running was going poorly, then I could focus on another interest. And for me, entrepreneurship's always been a big passion of mine, and starting businesses and growing businesses. And so, this summer, well, actually, the business that I'm currently involved in, I'm the CEO of Run Gum. When I created that back in 2014, it was created out of an injury. Because I couldn't race and I had a lot of free time. And then, of course, this summer, when I couldn't go to the games, as frustrating as that was, it presented a huge opportunity to work on my business and grow Run Gum. And that's exactly what I did over the summer.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Hey, I read a little bit about Run Gum and how it was developed and how it's used. Would love you to kind of give some of our listeners an idea about what Run Gum is and how it's used by athletes.
Yeah, definitely. So Run Gum was actually born out of necessity for me. In my racing and training, I knew what I needed. So I actually have a degree in biochemistry, and I knew the stimulants, the legal performance enhancing stimulants that I wanted. But the way I was getting caffeine and taurine and B vitamins was typically through energy drinks. And I loved the way they made me feel, but I absolutely hated what they did to my stomach. I mean, more often than not, I'd drink one and then race or work out, and I would throw it up. And I just thought to myself, this is such a stupid way to get the stimulants. I want the energy. I'm not thirsty. So why am I drinking all of this sugary acidic liquid? So I took everything that's in an energy drink. I got rid of all the junk, all the water, all the sugar, and I took the stimulants, the only parts of that energy drink that I really desired, and I put it into 2 pieces of chewing gum. And gum is such a better delivery vehicle because it allows me to absorb the stimulants sublingually through the lining of my mouth. I absorb them faster than I would if I was to swallow something, and I have nothing sloshing around in my stomach. So Run Gum, 100 milligrams of caffeine, 40 milligrams of taurine and B vitamins, 0 sugars, 0 calories. It is all the stimulants with none of the other junk to slow you down. And we launched that in October of 2014. We've been in business just over 2 years, and it's been overwhelming seeing so many different athletes, not just runners, but cyclists and climbers and so many different people finding a use for this product.
Well, I tell you what, it is the truth. I think that's probably one of the questions we get more commonly than anything else especially from a runner's perspective, is we're putting things in our body and our stomachs can't handle all of the stuff we're putting in our bodies.
Exactly.
And how do you deal with that?
I mean, if you listen to people, you're supposed to drink a liter of Noon, and then you're supposed to take 3 packs of goo, and then you're supposed to somehow find room for actual food at some point. And I don't know about you guys, but my stomach is just being bombarded with nasty sugar, and I couldn't take it anymore. I knew what I wanted to fuel was just these stimulants. I really didn't want anything else in my stomach. So by putting them in a piece of chewing gum, it just saves that room in your stomach for the stuff that you really want in there. And the added benefit of gum is that it's super lightweight and it's easy to manufacture. So, instead of paying $3 for a cup of coffee or $3 for an energy drink or an energy shot, you can go to rungum.com and you can get a packet of Run Gum for $1.50. It's not only more efficient and more effective, it's more affordable. And for all those reasons, I think that the running community and athletes all over the world are really starting to understand the benefits of functional chewing gum and why Run Gum is the right choice for them.
I love that. Love that. Hey, one of the things that I enjoy about you is kind of your passion, and that you will speak on whatever needs to be spoken about. One of the things I've been wanting to ask you is that, it doesn't take much to be able to see when people write a headline about you. They'll many times it's the controversial, or they put this tagline on with Nick Symmonds. How do you, how do you deal with that over there? Have you been able to just accept, hey, that's just with me speaking my voice, I just kind of accept that role?
It's actually part of my brand, and then if you think about an athlete as a brand, it's something that sets me apart, right? How many times have we seen a press conference where someone asks an athlete a tough question about doping or about rules, Rule 40, or any of these other tough questions, and the athlete says no comment? And I always say that's bullshit. Yeah. I mean, as a professional athlete, it's your job to have opinions and to comment upon the things that are pertinent to this sport. Yeah. So from day one, I said everything is on limits. I have a comment about every situation, and I don't think in 10 years, 11 years of being a professional athlete, I've never once said no comment. And so if a reporter wants to ask a tricky question and can't get a quote from an athlete because they're too scared to answer a question that should be answered, they've called me. And people say I'm brash, or sometimes they say I'm stupid for answering these questions, but I think it is our job to have an opinion. And I always say, as my grandfather said before me, everyone's entitled to my opinion.
I love that. Hey, one of the things that's been fascinating to watch, and would love to kind of get your feedback on kind of where everything is now. It is curious to me how many athletes don't speak up. So, when you have athletes who are having a tough time trying to support themselves, trying to train, and when you look at, just look at the USATF, what was a couple years ago, they signed a contract with Nike, through 2040. I don't even know how
23-year deal.
Yeah, I mean, for $500 million. I mean, people are making some money in this industry, but the athletes,
but it's not the athletes.
Yeah, it's not the athletes.
It's the guys. It's Max Siegel who in the Washington Post just exposed the fact that he's taking $1.7 million a year in pay, which is 7 times what counterparts in other nonprofits make. The fact that the Nike guys who brought USATF that deal are skimming off close to $1 million a year. There's lots of money out there. Yeah. The powers that be try to tell us that track's just not that popular. There's just not that much money in the sport. There's billions of dollars in the sport. They just never bother to let any of it go to the athletes.
Is there a model that should work? Is there an easy fix they just don't pay attention to, or they don't care about?
There's a super, super easy fix, and it's just allowing athletes to be the independent contractors they are, to run their own business. And if they would loosen the reins on the regulations of who an athlete can represent and how they can give a sponsor a return on investment, and athletes would go out and raise millions and millions of dollars. I've, as an athlete, approached dozens of businesses and said, I would love to represent your company. And the first question they ask is, well, where can you put my logo on your body in competition? And if I'm racing in an IAAF certified race or an IOC race, nowhere. And then immediately the conversation ends. Brooks Running, for example, has supported me for the last 3 years. And if I had made the Olympic Games and gone out to Rio, I wouldn't even be allowed to mention them by name while I was out there.
Wow.
How absurd is that? I think Brooks is amazing, and I think that they support athletes because they believe it's the right thing to do. But in terms of a business decision, if it's me and I do own a business, Run Gum is extremely reluctant to put money into athletes, knowing that if we invest in those athletes and get them on an Olympic team, they can't even mention us by name when they get to the biggest stage, to the Olympic Games. I mean, it really, really hurts athletes. And that's one of the reasons that Run Gum has brought a lawsuit against USATF and USOC. We believe that their rules violate antitrust laws and are massively crippling an athlete's ability to market themselves.
So for those who are not familiar, have not followed along, would love you kind of give. So the basic framework of this, correct if I'm wrong, is that if I'm an entrepreneur looking to support athletes, looking to sponsor someone, I can't put a logo if it's not I can't put a logo anywhere on athletes, so not on the clothing or not on their body or anywhere on the athlete. So I get no benefit for basically sponsoring an athlete. Is that essentially what it is?
Right. If the athlete is competing at any international race governed by IAAF, the international governing body that controls our competitions, or at an Olympic trials or at an Olympic Games, the only logos that can be present on their body are the manufacturer of their singlet, their shorts, and their shoes.
Wow.
You can't have any logos on their skin or on their singlet or anywhere else. So all these companies, and there's companies with $1 million or even $1 billion marketing budgets, they can't put their logo anywhere. And if you can't connect the athlete with the brand, then there's no return on investment. And there's no point in even making that investment, in my opinion.
Well, I don't think we've got a great picture of what a day in and day out life is of an athlete training for the Olympics. So and it's because I think a lot of us can't put that in perspective of, someone who's trying to train as often as possible. Do they have to go out and get a part-time job? How does an athlete deal with some of the handcuffs they're given?
Well, it depends on how successful you are. If you're making teams consistently, if you have a great shoe deal, then you're training full time and you don't have to have another job. I was lucky from day one to have a contract with a shoe company. So, running has always been my number one priority in my job. Some athletes, and over 50% of professional track and field athletes live below the poverty line, and they have to have second jobs. They're working as a barista, or they are working at a local running specialty store. They're working hard just to pay the bills, and it's detracting from their ability to focus on their training, and that's not right. And I argue that every athlete that wants a stab at becoming a professional runner should get a chance. USATF needs to do a lot more to support these athletes. They support their tier 1 athletes, their medalists and their US championships. But even then, it's too little. It's the money just not going where it needs to go. And we really could have a much healthier professional scene if USATF would just do their job.
Yeah. When you look back over your career, Nick, are there a handful of races or a moment in particular that you look back on probably with more fondness than anything else?
I think my win at the 2008 Olympic trials will always be my best running memory. I think, for better or for worse, in the United States of America, there's two, and even worldwide, there's two camps or two groups of runners or professional athletes. There's those that have made the Olympics, an Olympic team, and there's those that haven't. And it's sad because there's so much more to the sport than just the Olympic Games. Yeah. But the general public kind of says there's our Olympians and then there's everybody else. And so in 2008, when I was able to punch my ticket to Beijing, it really solidified what I was doing. It really added a certain level of validity to all the sacrifice I'd been making, all the hard work I'd been putting in. I had become an Olympian, and I knew that no matter what else happened, I'd always have that title next to my name.
That's really neat. As you have looked to move on to other things, of course, with Run Gum and your business, is there kind of a next thing for you from a physical standpoint? Are you looking at maybe doing something else or getting some other outdoor challenges? Anything particular you're looking forward to doing next?
Well, I think I'm going to run professionally for one more year,
okay,
and then I'm going to switch and start mountain climbing. When I was 10. Growing up in Boise, I set 2 goals for myself: to become an Olympian and to climb the tallest mountain on every continent.
Wow.
And for the last 20 years, I've been pursuing my passion on the track, but I want to go back and revisit that goal that I set of climbing the tallest mountains. It's called the 7 Summits, 7 continents, 7 mountains. And it's a lifelong project. It's not something I can do in a year. It's probably not something I can do in 3 or 4 years, but I think that as soon as I hang up my spikes, I'll grab my crampons and really start pursuing my passion for mountaineering.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Sounds neat. Hey, one of the things that I know you're coming back from, which I know we get a lot of questions about staying healthy. Have there been some things throughout your career that you have applied to try and help you stay healthy throughout the years that some of our recreational runners would be smart to grab hold of?
I think the number one thing you can do is just train smart, and so many people don't. Unfortunately, they think more is more, but that's just not the case. I always say, train smart, not hard. Everyone thinks if I just work harder, then I'll be better. That's just not the case. You want to work smarter. And, if you want to know what kind of training I've done or the kind of rehab or any of that stuff, I just recently published my 2012 training log. Every single workout that I did to get me to a 5th place showing at the 2012 Olympic Games, where I ran 1:42.9 for 800 meters. I published that training log for free, and you can go to rungum.com where you can find a link to download it. And that was a year where I trained extremely smart and not necessarily hard, but I was healthy the entire 11-month period. And that consistency is what led to that massive personal best in the Olympic final. So there's a lot of resources at rungum.com. We have blogs, podcasts, YouTube videos, all kind of resources for athletes. And again, just remember, when you're training, are you training hard or are you training smart?
That's good. That's good. Hey, but speaking of the Olympics, we'd love to kind of get your thoughts. It has been an interesting transition this past year from Rio. I think for years we saw the sprinters for the United States kind of own it. And I tell you what, the middle to long distance events this year are just phenomenal, including Murphy Clayton with taking home third in Rio with the bronze.
It was pretty cool to watch. Team USA just stepped it up across the board. And, I think not just increased. There were amazing competitions. I don't want to minimize any of the performances, but the fact that the governing bodies finally started to clean the sport up a little bit, the fact that the Russians weren't there, the fact that many East Africans were serving drug bans. I mean, Team USA, I think overwhelmingly is a clean team, that we do it right and we don't cheat. And so many people that we've been competing against for the last 2, 3, 4 decades have been doing it dirty and doing it wrong. And now that the playing field is finally being leveled a little bit, it allows our stars who are doing it right to shine. And it's just a shame. It's a shame that the governing bodies, and WADA and USADA, for that matter, haven't done their job the way that they should in years past.
Yeah, is there it was funny, we were talking a few weeks ago, kind of wrapping up the Olympics with Mario Fraioli, and he was saying, he's like, hey, you get busted, you're done. He said that's the easiest way to clean it up. Is that kind of your train of thought too? You get busted and you're done? Is that the best way to handle it?
I mean, that's just, the tip of the iceberg, though. There are so many different policies that need to be implemented in order to clean the sport up. Lifetime bans is a no-brainer.
Yep.
But giving a thorough review of our TUE, our therapeutic use exemption system, needs to happen. WADA and USADA and all of the local anti-doping administrations need to be better funded. There's just the federations need to be held accountable better. I really hate to be a negative Nancy and point out the flaws. I'd like to be a positive person, but when it comes to doping, so little is being done to control it and clean the sport up right now that it is disheartening. And I really believe that we have one of the most beautiful and pure sports around, and it's a shame that the anti-doping administrations and the federations haven't done more to clean it up.
Do you think the science can keep up with the cheating? I mean, we look at the pharmaceutical industry. I just think of the trillions and trillions of dollars that industry is. Is that another struggle, or is that just kind of an excuse? Do we think?
If history's any indication, no. The cheaters are better funded and they're more nimble and they can move quicker, and they will always. And I'm just speaking out of observation of the last 30 years. They'll always be one step ahead of the drug. The testers of the anti-doping administration. I think it was the head of WADA, I believe, actually said that they estimate they only catch 1% of cheaters. 1%. What a horrible rate.
Good.
I mean, that's just it's laughable that we're spending millions of dollars and they're only able to catch 1% of cheats.
Hey, just kind of wrapping up. We appreciate your time. A couple other fun things I did want to check on. I would be crazy not to ask this because we had a guy in our office who actually won kind of the Krispy Kreme challenge. You eat a dozen donuts and run a 5K.
Yeah.
So so tell me about a beer mile in 5 minutes and 19 seconds. So that's 4 cans of beer, right?
Yeah, and 4 laps.
And 4 laps in 5 minutes. That's crazy. Nick, that is crazy.
Well, I like to drink and I like to run, so they work together pretty well. But, a beer mile is it's a really fun event. It was kind of this thing that kids did after their cross-country season to blow off some steam. And I ran them every fall in college. But, I think that the general public is finding that this is something it's just a party, right? You find a track or a parking lot that's measured out to 400 meters and you drink some beers and you run some laps. And, I'm not saying that this needs to be an Olympic event by any means. I certainly don't think that it should, but
hey, we would watch it.
It's kind of yeah, I know. I think a lot of people would. It's a fun way to blow off some steam. And so I was able to run 5:19 after London. I ran that about 2 weeks after my Olympic final. And I work with the National Beer Mile to kind of promote it. And I think people can find one near them and see what they can do. 4 beers, 4 laps as quickly as you can. No puking. That'll get you disqualified immediately. But yeah, find one near you and have some fun with it.
That's awesome. And probably my favorite thing that I like is that you have a buddy named Mortimer. It doesn't get better than how's Mortimer?
He's good. I grew up with pets. I grew up on a farm.
Okay.
And I like having pets, but I'm on the road 6 or 7 months out of the year, so a rabbit's about all I can take care of right now.
That's great. Well, Nick, thanks so much for your time. It was a real pleasure to talk with you, and thanks for being such a great representative of the running community. And again, just a pleasure to talk with you today.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your time and great questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Right. Goodbye.